to another episode of the Official Food Truck Podcast. I'm Andrew Z, your host, produced by Broadcast Hippo. We got a very special guest on the line. It is Chef Avi, and the food truck he has is the Chubby Chickpea in Boston, Mass. Avi, what's up, brother?
You're going to be disappointed with my lack of Boston accent, but not too much, man. What's up?
You are in the Boston area, though, right?
I am, yeah. Yep. And I was born and raised here. I just, for some reason, just don't have a Boston accent.
I know why. That's such a disappointment, bro. I was waiting for heavy Boston. You don't got it.
No, it's kind of crazy because if I find myself in the Midwest, people be like, "You're from Boston, right?" I'm like, what? I want to learn enough about this accent to try to understand what part you're picking up on. Because like here, no, they're like, oh, like if you go to a White Castle in Indiana, they're like, what is that? You from Boston, aren't you? But no, really? I don't know. Yeah.
Now you have your own little show that you do called Table of Two, right? Or
Party of Two. Yep.
Party of Two. Tell us a little about that before we even get started.
Sure. Yeah. Party of Two is a YouTube series I do where I'm joined each episode by one guest, usually a chef, sometimes like an industry leader of some kind, and always somebody I know in real life. And we kind of go to a restaurant that has a meaning to one of us. I like it to be the guest. Sometimes it's a place that means something to me more than them. It's always somewhere where one of us hasn't been. So the idea is like the food is really the backdrop for a conversation, but it's kind of like, it's no different than like in real life. If I come to your city and you're like, yo, Av, I got to show you the spot. There's a magic that happens between two people in that moment, right? Like when you're showing me something you love, I'm learning about you, not just the food. And I think that's kind of the idea of the show.
It's so interesting because the restaurants that we love, we're going to have some great memories of. So I never even thought of it that way, that wherever I take you, that I'm going to have some memories there, and we're going to have some interesting combo if we're talking about me or the place or whatever. It's so cool. I love the idea.
And I really believe like food, drinks too are something like you learn a lot about somebody in how they eat or drink. So like, it's funny because I was before I was a chef. So since I was 14 years old, I've been a rapper and I've done shows like all over the country. And one of my favorite lines that I ever had was like, I like fine dining, drinking wine on a yacht or boat, but I'm at home in a dive bar eating Domino's with the common folk. And like, I think what you'd learn about me going out to eat with me is like, listen, we can put a jacket on and go 5-star, or like, I want to show you like Big D's bar pizza down the street from me. Like, I'm happy in all environments.
Yes. Well, and so white kids rapping is kind of hard if you're not Eminem or a handful of others. How was it for you?
It was cool. It's funny actually. I did my first show in like 6 years, 2 months ago, and it's really crazy seeing how much the industry has changed. So like when I was coming up, like I was rapping before Eminem became famous, but I was not doing show. Like I was in high school when Eminem broke out. So by the time I was doing shows, of course, like the comparison was like, oh, you're going to be like Eminem. And I'm just a very different rapper, like style wise than he was. So you had to it was harder to make it if you were a white rapper at the time, but you had to be really, really good to make it. And, I did some big things in Boston and stuff like, again, like around the country a little bit. And I always felt like I got a lot of respect. Now you get in the scene and it's kind of like rap has become at least half white. So now you can actually see corny white rappers. And when I was coming up, it was like, if someone was a white rapper and at a party, they told you they rap, they were probably not good. But if you saw them on a stage, they probably had to prove it to somebody. Yeah. And now you can actually see bad white rappers. Different.
So funny. Now, okay, so you said there was a 6-year gap on stage, and obviously you're so fascinating. This interview's gonna take some turns, but for me, I did radio for my whole life, and then for the last 5 or 6 years, I haven't done radio. I've done other things, and I didn't even know I missed it until this podcasting thing started. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of missed it. Is it the same with you? I mean, when you keep yourself busy, I don't think you think about it as much, but I'm guessing when you jump back on stage, you're like, hey man, I kind of miss this.
100%. So I think for me, I learned to cook when I was 4. My dad was a chef. And I think like food was a passion of mine, but the need, because I try to be pretty self-realized. I know that I cook for like the adulation. Like that's what I cook for. I cook for a dining room full of people to
Right.
feel me, really feel me. And music was that for me for a long time. And then when I opened my first place, I used to write a song a day, and all of a sudden I went 8 years. I didn't write anything. I
Right.
just didn't need it. It was like that outlet was for on a plate for me now. And then I did a podcast a couple years ago, and it came up in conversation that I used to rap. Because I think there's a lot of comparisons that can be made between the food industry and the music industry. And
Mhm.
I was talking about it, and I could tell they thought I was corny. Like I was like, they think I was a corny white rapper. So
Right,
I
right.
ended up rapping on the podcast, and it's like I didn't know I missed that. Like I didn't know how badly I needed that. So I
Mm.
went out and did a show in the city, like not quite open mic, but like that level almost.
Mhm.
And I didn't care. Like it was that moment where everyone stops what they're doing and turns around because they realize like, oh wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, so I went almost the 2 years, and then I did another show. And yeah, like it's just something like I didn't realize I missed. And in between that, I put a studio in the basement of one of my restaurants because I was like, you got to do this.
You got the bug again. It's interesting, Avi, because when it comes to restaurateur, there is a bit of show to it. There's a lot of show to it actually,
Mhm.
because you can get I don't know, meatloaf anywhere, but it's the atmosphere, it's the other stuff that makes you. I mean, the food might be a little better, but the atmosphere, it all goes together for something. And when, like you said, when you're in a busy restaurant, I think you feel that need of being in front and center with the restaurant stuff, put the other stuff on the back burner. But now that you've kind of gone through that, now you're feeling the bug to go back. Does that all make sense? What I just said?
It makes more sense than anything's ever made sense. It's 100%. And like in my head, I'm like going through all the comparisons between the industries. So like for me, I started with this little brick and mortar and then went to food trucks
Mhm.
because like food trucks are the food industry equivalent of like underground hip hop.
Mm,
Like
yes.
you're there just for the content. We've eliminated the rest of it, but then that lack of atmosphere becomes the atmosphere,
Mm.
right? So then like actually like late night music kind of jump in, little bit of light, knowing you're directly dealing with the person that cooked this food for you becomes the atmosphere. So it's almost like, that's what hipster culture is, right? Is trying to take these like super organic things and make them into stuff that we can replicate. And that's at its core, when the food truck business is really, really real,
Mhm.
it's what underground hip hop is. When
Well,
it's sort of like replicated and corporations are trying to get into it, it becomes what bad underground music is. It becomes that like fake dive bar kind of thing.
you're making it so romantic. I love it. Like it gives you, and just hearing you talk, I mean, you feed off that energy. You're like, yes. And here's the cool thing too, and I think you're gonna understand this. I've had successes and many failures in the restaurant business,
Oh, yeah.
and there's no better feeling than having a packed restaurant and you're throwing orders out and you're talking to customers and you're doing this. And there's lines and there's this great vibe. And there's no worse feeling in the world than a fucking empty restaurant on a Friday night when you're like, I want to kill myself. This is the worst decision ever. You every hour is miserable there.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that comes close to that second feeling
Uh,
is when you're jamming and everyone is a puddle and they fail, because as the owner, you're like, you already see that empty dining room. You're like, no, these people came. We have to get them to come back, please. But I agree, like it's actually still a better feeling in that moment than standing in an empty restaurant. And everyone on the team is like one step away from not wanting to come back. And the one customer that walks in, you're like, you wish they hadn't because you're embarrassed. You're like, these people, this is so bad. It happens. Yeah, for sure it happens. Oh, I don't know why I can't hear you all of a sudden. Can you hear me? I don't know what happened.
See, can you hear me now, Avi?
I can now. Yep.
I don't know what the hell happened, but I mean, an empty restaurant is soul sucking. It's just
It is. That's the best way to put it. Is that's exactly it. And like You know, it's funny because like as we've expanded and grown, and I've got managers who came up under me and like are like my people, and then they manage people. The thing I still have to like sometimes just be in the room for is the dead nights, because I'm like, on a dead night, I'm like, yo, give me a menu. Let me turn it on the backside. Yo, what are 3 desserts that we need to create for this weekend? Yo, bartender, what's the coolest idea you have that you have never made? Make it now. Make 4 of it so that everyone can have one. Like, I'm like, because we need to infuse soul in that moment, because the dead nights, they kill the mojo. And I'm like, so like this week, so we just, my flagship restaurant, Simca, just celebrated our 3rd anniversary this past Saturday night. And we did like an 8-course tasting prefix, and we had a kind of a fun night. And we had our best sales night since our 5th month in business. It's obviously like part of that is that COVID took 2 years basically away from us. But I felt like we crushed it so much, because on Wednesday when it was dead, I made it a point to be in the room, and I just did one of those back of the napkin, guys, hey, create this cocktail. Hey, what's an idea that we could do? And I learned from a chef friend of mine, Dave Becker, like 8 years ago, when I was the guy who spun every batch of hummus even. I asked him one day, I'm like, how can you stand at the front and greet your guests at such a like dope ass restaurant and not have to be in the kitchen? And he said, if you want to own the whole dream, then you got to carry all the weight. If you're willing to find people in the room that care and let them take control of things, you'll be able to carry less weight. And like, that's just a good example, is like the stuff coming out that night wasn't all from my brain. Some of it was like a new cocktail that the bartender created on Wednesday when it was dead. And I let her pour it and pour it and pour it until we got it right. And I mean, that made for a fun night for me too, by the way. And then
go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was gonna say, and then like the pita station kid like created a dish. And that's something that like he took ownership over. So then on Saturday night, like there's this person who's putting their whole soul. I can't put my whole soul into every dish on the menu. I mean, I did at one point put my soul into that dish, but now there was this one thing that like the maestro himself that made that orchestra was working on it all night, and it just made for a beautiful night.
Avi, you turn excitement in me. I mean, we are like mind melding. I just love your shit. First of all, what you said, which is a genius moment, is some of the best ideas happen in a dead restaurant. but that can also be taken to a food truck. Some of the best ideas, you're like, all right, fuck, well, what? Let's change this on the menu. Let's do this. And like you said, it happens when you're not busy. Because if you're busy, you're not thinking about that stuff.
Food trucks are better for it. That's why I love the food trucks. Is they're incubators. Every concept, every dope thing that my company does across any of our brands comes from our truck, because it's like it's a place where I can roll something out in a busy environment. Like we can go find a busy place to fall on our face trying something out. And a dead food truck is like, man, it's just me, you, fryer, grill. Like, let's fuck around. Like, something good's got to come out of here. And you can say right to the customer, yo, can I get you to try something? Hey, let me give you this. And, you know, now they're involved. The whole thing it breeds energy, you know?
So, okay. And here's the second part of what you said then, which is another genius moment, is that when you let your staff, there's some people the owners I've seen that the staff's like, hey, try this. I made this. And they're like, just make what's on the fucking menu. Just stop. And you can see the soul being crushed of that person that made this dish, because they care enough about your restaurant. They want you to put it on your menu. Right. But when you start taking input from others and let them put stuff on the menu, even if it's specials, well, now they are that much more tied to your restaurant. They're that much more caring that your brand succeeds, because they have a vested interest now in it. And it's just genius. And that's the way we should all look at it. Doesn't matter if it's food trucks or restaurants, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, just right. And it's funny because like, I don't read business books very often, but sometimes I have my ideas validated by people I know. All my friends are in finance and corporate world and stuff. And people will say, well, that's the Google method, or that's the Epic method. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, like, listen, these corporations spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to figure out how to mine ideas from their very talented staff. And then you look around a restaurant and you go, listen, if I want to just have burger flippers, then I can hire just burger flippers. But the truth is that a beautiful thing happens when you find people who are motivated by more than money. Like I always tell people, you know, my GM at that restaurant is motivated by wanting to see his name in lights. So every single time he kicks the ever living shit out of service and brings staff ahead, and I give him public credit, because at the end of the day, man, now I don't have to be the face of that restaurant. What are you talking about? There's people that they don't care about who I am. They care who he is. And that's a beautiful thing for me and him. We can win together, and I don't feel the weight on my shoulders of like I went down to Sobe a couple weeks ago. I'm gone from my restaurant for a whole week. And like, I took 3 phone calls the whole week, and I come back and like Saturday night happened, you know, and I like to be involved. I want to be there, but there's a thing that happens when you stop having to be there. And it starts with empowering, I think, the people around you to take ownership over it.
Yes. The other thing, Avi, is I was, I had a successful restaurant. We're booming, whatever. And I had a successful restaurateur in town come to the restaurant and said, "Hey, I have a second restaurant and I want you to take it over." And I'm like, "Really? Why?" He said, "Because his original restaurant has a soul. Like, you don't know, you can't really put a label on it, but when you walk in, you know it's there. It has it." And he said, "When I walk into your restaurant, it has it." He said, "My second restaurant doesn't have it. And I want you," he said, "I'm older. I'm getting ready to retire. I don't have time to deal with it. I want to give it to you, and you take it over and give it soul." What is that, Avi? I'm guessing this first time we've met, but I'm guessing your restaurants have that. What is that thing that you walk in and you're like, "Oh, it's a vibe, it's a soul, it's whatever." Restaurants either have it or they don't, or I don't know if you can create it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like, so first of all, good on him for having the self-realization to recognize that about his own place and about you. Agreed. And good on you for being someone who someone could see that in. For me, I think what that is if you ever copy and paste, then like there just isn't soul in that, right? There just isn't. Whereas if you right, I mean, listen, this is what happens with music. Like, and it's, you know, I can stick to hip hop as a genre. We can talk about other music, but like, just looking at hip hop, for example, let's use Eminem as an example. Since we mentioned him earlier, people will say like, "How did Eminem fall off so hard?" Well, the answer is like, Jay-Z has a great line about his first album. He says, "Reasonable Doubt might not be my best work, but it's my favorite album because I spent 26 years making it. And every other year I only spend a year making it." And I think what happens is like, you look at certain artists across all genres, and like, there's a soul about their organic process. And then once they get to a point where Green Day has to put an album out every year as part of their contract, well, then now there's a formulaic, you know, like all of a sudden they're like, "Well, we need a melodic chorus. Well, we need," and I think that happens in the restaurant industry. It happens in food trucks. It happens in food trucks super, because you see like how busy you can be in one place. And then you go, "Well, if we had 4 of these things," yeah, but you don't have the people. You have the people to put 4 times the food out. You don't have the people to rock 4 times that service. There's a food truck actually in the Boston area called Chicken and Rice Guys. And what I think is amazing about what they did from a business standpoint, their owner, this kid, Ian So, is a friend of mine. What I think is incredible what they did was they kept their food so simple. You know, it's not that it's unremarkable. It's that it's simple. It wasn't chef driven. They didn't need a top level cook to make it. So they just hired top level personalities. So actually they had 7 trucks at one point, and every one of them had soul. And I was like, I always was jealous of that, because I would look at it and go, you're not diluting your brand, you're increasing it. And I think that's what that guy was recognizing in your restaurant was like, look, he didn't have the ability to go into a place. And for me, it's that I try to find someone who, like, say somebody is kind of kick ass, but they're not in the right restaurant. So like, I'll look at it and go, man, like, fine dining is not your thing, but you would be the coolest person over, like, doing lunch shifts over at the barbecue joint. And then you let that person, like, you have like discussions. I mean, I'm not so formal that it needs to be like a board meeting or anything, but like, let's sit down and talk about the playlist. Let's talk about music. You find some kid that's like in the indie music, and you let them create your barbecue shop playlist where they're working the fryer. The place has soul.
Yes.
that dude can't grill a burger, but he can work the fryer, and every song knocks all day. And it's
I love it, man. I tell you what, man. So when it comes to, I'm gonna give you two examples. Same thing you said, radio, and then a restaurant example. The radio example is you can teach someone how to push the fucking buttons. A monkey can push the buttons. It doesn't matter. You can't teach someone personality. You can't teach someone how to tell a story compellingly. You can't teach. I would take 10 storytellers over the most amazing radio person button pusher that there is out there, because those are the people you can teach the other stuff. And same thing about a restaurant. I had this restaurant and I ended up having legal troubles, and it was a whole fucking thing, but whatever. But when it was going, I mean, I had a guy in the kitchen that he was a rapper too, but and he would come out, we would be playing music on a Friday night, and I have him come out and do a song, and he'd have his wireless mic, and he'd go back in the kitchen. But it's shit like just little things like that bring the soul that we're talking about with a restaurant. And the same thing with a food truck. Like this is the next example. There's a food truck that it's a noodles food truck. Noodles are they're average, but they're in the back. They got a giant wok. They're flipping them, and they're chopping the freaking veggies and doing all that stuff. And then it just increases the deliciousness of them, I guess, because really, it's just average noodles in a little tiny cup that you sell for $14. I'm like, but the lines are down the line whenever they show up, because they went with there's stagecraft to it that they get.
Yeah, and the truth is, like, not everybody has what you have. Not everybody has what I have. Like, at some point, you got to look around the room and go, like, sometimes I'll say to my old assistant, she was really cool, like, awesome person, but like 10 years older than me, and just like a little bit like, sometimes she was cool as hell, but like her friends and stuff like were sort of vanilla. And she would start telling me like, well, this person does this thing. And I used to say to her, I used to laugh and go, listen, I drop so much cool on the ground, I don't stop to pick it back up. Like, and the thing is that, like, at some point, you got to realize, like, they're getting in line because there's a lot of vanilla people, and or my dad used to say cream cheese, soft and white. And his thing is that, like, my dad was Israeli. And so anyway, he used to say, like, look, these people get in line because they want to be part of that party that you're starting. You know what I mean? Like, they look at you, they feel that energy off of you, and they want to be part of it. And, because at the end of the day, if they're open-minded enough, they can be cool. They just need to be willing to. They just need to want to be. People don't go out to spend money because they have to eat. There's a lot of places you can eat. People go out to spend money because they want to feel something. I call food like that's really pretty and is, technically sound, but makes you feel nothing. I call it sociopathic. I'll be like, that's sociopathic food. It doesn't feel anything, and it doesn't make me feel anything.
No,
I want food that makes me feel something.
And then there'll be 10 or 20 or 30 food trucks out there that all serve a burger and wings and whatever, and basically a restaurant type menu. It's the old Roach Coaches kind of, that type where they just got a little bit of everything just threw up on their truck, and they go to Gordon's and get all the food or do whatever, and they cook it up, and it's like, all right. I mean, they're gonna have some success, but what makes you go from that to standing out? Is it you need to do one item great that people crave? I mean, how do you make your successful and stand out and not be an ordinary place, but one of the places you have to go, people crave?
So, I mean, I don't think I've cracked the code by any stretch. I mean, I have dead nights, but I do think, like, for me, it's realizing that, like, I need to feel something. Like, I need to care about it. And if I don't, so one person that sort of changed the direction for me was when I first started out my first place, I wanted to make something super formulaic. Like, my goal was, I saw myself as like the next generation of what my dad had done. And I was like, let's just make something that's like super recreatable. Let's go with the frozen chicken instead of the thing we bred ourselves, because it'll be consistent and always the same. And somebody came in one time and he was like, how come there's no scallions in your Israeli salad? And I said, oh, at home we do that, but with this, like, I think American people don't want the scallion, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and goes, listen, if you make everything the way you love it, there's gonna be people that love it. If you make something you don't even love, maybe no one will love it. And so, like, I don't love everything on my menus. And actually, to me, that's growth, because my rule is someone in here has to love it. Like, bartenders will bring me a cocktail. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, listen, I like to have a drink, so I'm going to drink this. But do you like it? Like, if you think it's dope, let's put it on the menu. And if it doesn't sell, we'll take it off the menu. But not everything has to be curated by me. It can be curated by you or you or you. And so to me, like, I think rather than focusing on, it's just such an interesting corporate culture to sit around and try to figure out what's cool. There's someone who's just cool in the room. Just ask Joe or Sarah or whatever how they feel. Hey, Sarah, what do you think is cool? And Sarah's like, honestly, I just think sweatpants and a hoodie is cool. Then wear sweatpants and a hoodie. If she's like, listen, I think like if you're not getting manicures, you're a loser. All right, well then her boyfriend should get a manicure or her girlfriend should get a manicure, whatever, and keep it moving. But I think we spend too much time sometimes trying to figure out how to do it and just try it, grip it and rip it.
So Chubby Chickpea is the food truck. What is the best seller on the truck?
The falafel. So the falafel is the top seller, and then really close is the Chubby Chickpea, which is falafel and shawarma in the same pita pocket. But definitely the falafel is our thing. And I always tell people, I'm like, no matter what, not at our barbecue place, at our sit down place, I've never made anything as good as that falafel, and I probably never will. And every time I ever eat it, I'm always happy. Like I'll go just to have it.
Do you ever get tired of your own food though? You're like, dude, I can't. I'm not eating this food anymore. I can't. I eat it every day. I made it. I've been here for 5 years. I cannot eat this food anymore.
So, I get tired of different. Some of our food, like, I'll come back to it. I think like people ask me all the time, like why I keep opening places. I mean, I've got a crazy variety of concepts now. And honestly, it's because I'll be like, honestly, I love barbecue. I want to get good at barbecue. Oh, you know what? I have my favorite fried chicken. That makes me feel good knowing like if I want fried chicken and I want the best fried chicken, I can just go to one of my spots. I can go eat fried chicken. I'm actually in the midst of opening a project that's going to incorporate South Shore bar pizza. So like here south of Boston, where I grew up, we have like the only unique food item to our region is what we call South Shore bar pizza. So it's a pan pizza, but it's super thin crust and the cheese and sauce goes all over the edge. So like I've got a new project where we're taking over a kitchen that had pizza ovens in it. And I was like, dude, we're doing the South Shore bar pizza. I developed recipes for a bar like 6 years ago as part of a project. So I was like, we're just doing that in there. And I did it because I want to eat some pizza. I was like, you know what? Like, I want to eat pizza.
It's funny, dude. We are very much alike. You're way more successful than I am.
No, listen, not everything that glitters is gold. Like, it's my job to make myself look super successful.
In this 30-minute span, I just got to sound successful in this 30 minutes, and then I can go do whatever I got to do, right?
Yeah, exactly right. It's like I can go back to my day job. No, I'm just kidding.
So, like, for me, I have in my head, I have the Cinnamon Roll Factory, which is like a breakfast spot. But yeah, I've never done it, but it's just in my head to where we serve giant plate-sized cinnamon rolls. And it's the first thing that comes out. You put the server puts a cinnamon roll right in the middle of the table. It's for everyone to share. And then she's got a container of the frosting on top, and it's hot. And she just drizzles the frosting on top of it, and it's free. As soon as you walk in the door, everyone gets one of those before you even order. It's like chips and salsa at a Mexican place.
I don't know if you saw the face I made when you first said it. I'm like, dude, let's just do that. Let's just do that. And by the way, But I didn't like the last part about the free. So let's do it like this. What if that's just the whole concept? Is like a plate-sized cinnamon roll, right? And just charge one price, like the Five Guy model. Like, and then you got all these toppings. And people don't like to be haggled, like the whole give them the pickle philosophy. So it's, I'm just throwing a round number. It's a $12 cinnamon roll, right? But it's plate-sized. And listen, all these things you can put on. Shit, you can put pulled pork on that. Right? I can see that. Like, dude, I'll show up to your place, plate-sized cinnamon roll, pulled pork, barbecue sauce. Dude, that could be.
We would be dangerous together, brother. Dangerous together, I promise.
And I just feel like that's like systemizable. Like I'm on our 15th location right now in my head.
I love you, dude. I love you, man. Like I said, we've never spoken before. I've never had such a great connection with somebody. I don't think that quickly. You are amazing, man. And the last episode of your show that you did, Party of Two, I guess your parents owned restaurants, right? That's how.
Yeah, my dad owned restaurants. I mean, they were married. I say were. My dad just passed away 6 weeks ago.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And but they were married, so like, yeah, really, I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, you are my business partner, whether you recognize it or not. You're my business partner. But so yes, it's fair to say they own restaurants, but my dad owned restaurants. Yeah.
And then, so the last episode you went and sat down with your mom at a restaurant. What was the restaurant? What was the specialty of it? And then what did you get out of that conversation of the person that you've known your whole life?
Yeah, so we went to Town Spa, which is a place in Stoughton, Massachusetts, so a town over from where I grew up. That was kind of like the spot when I was in high school. And so I grew up very much like, even though my mom's American, my dad's Israeli, it was definitely very much like an immigrant experience, an immigrant home. And so by the time I got into high school, like there was like trying to be cool outside of home, and then there was like in the home. And for me, like Town Spa was this place, like when we went, like if there was a basketball game on a Friday night, anybody who was anybody had to go to Town Spa afterwards. So like South Shore Bar Pizza is their specialty, but they're really known for this honey mustard they make. So you gotta get the chicken tenders or the onion rings to dip them in the honey mustard. And the conversation for me, it was actually like really cool just even watching the episode back for me, because yeah, I mean, my mom and I are super tight, and she's been a huge impact on my life. And over the last 6 weeks, honestly, since my dad passed suddenly, and I feel like her and I have actually even gotten closer. It's interesting when you're a grown up and you're an adult, like learning things about yourself, learning things about somebody who raised you. And so we were sitting in this place, and I was asking her questions like I would ask a guest who I'd never really connected with on that level, that I'd never thought to ask her in my life. Like I realized like my mom grew up in a town with 1,800 people, closer to Erie, Pennsylvania than Buffalo, but like between the two. And I realized that she has 8 brothers and sisters. I didn't know what, like, I know a lot about her childhood. I didn't know what restaurant life was like growing up. So like at one point, I had asked her about like what going out to eat was like. And she said, like, really, they only ever went out to McDonald's. But at that time, like, my mom was born in 56. So she was like, at that time, though, like going to McDonald's for her family was like, they would go there, they would sit down, parents would order burgers and fries and just like pass them around. And it was a restaurant experience for them. And like pizza was made at home. Like they weren't really going out to eat that. Then we talked about how that kind of compared to my childhood, and then how it compared to my kids' childhood. So it's funny. It's like McDonald's for them was like, that was going out. For me, that was like, if we went to the Museum of Science, like the exciting part was like, I have a twin sister. So like my sister and I are like, oh, we're going to get to go to McDonald's. And now like my kids, it's like McDonald's is just the drive-through when we're running late, or like on a road, like driving for Thanksgiving to Buffalo or whatever. So it's funny how that changes, and how, again, the world just kind of spins.
I think so many people can relate to that morphing of what eating out is, because I think we're all in the same position. Like you said, they just take McDonald's for granted now. And for us, like I remember, like the meals, not the Happy Meals, but the value meals used to come in a little box, and the drink would fit in one box and blah, blah, and whatever. It was still a cool experience, to where now it's just, hey, I'm definitely not throwing something together at home. We're just going to McDonald's, and that's just the way it is. And it just shows how things have changed over the generations.
And I think QSRs have changed things a lot too, because like, since there's so much good food that's meant to be quick, because of that, like my kids have grown up like eating like good food in those situations that I grew up eating McDonald's. Like you can get Korean fried chicken in 5 minutes. So we don't have to go to Mickey D's. Like my kids, like they eat good. My kids eat everything. And and they're just their experience. I always talk, so my son started cooking when he was like 2.5. There's actually my last cookbook. I actually put a sauce recipe, and I told him, if you write it down, he'll turn 9 in a few weeks. I was like, if you write that down, I'll put it in my book. So like this nationally released cookbook has a recipe in it for Adley's sauce. And to me, it's like, I always tell him, like, I don't know if you'll be a chef or not, but if you do, you're going to crush me, because you've been eating stuff like since you were little that I would never eat.
Right. Man, okay. So if I want to do another show with you, I'm gonna reach out to your people. I'm gonna get with your people. How can people find you on social media? Because you're such a fascinating dude.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm really active on Facebook, where I'm unique enough. It's easy to find Avi Shem Tov. I'm at Chef Avi Shem Tov on Instagram. Our brands are at Simca Restaurant, at Chubby Food Truck, at Ala Esh Barbecue. Twitter at Chef Avi Shem Tov. Less active on Twitter, but just because it's a cesspool.
What about where can we find your show? Party of Two?
Yep. So on YouTube, it's Chickpea TV is the channel, and so we put all our videos up on Chickpea TV.
All right, the Chubby Chickpea out of Boston, Mass. Man, Avi, great talking to you. I think we're gonna talk some more in the future, man. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to hang out with us, brother.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna bring my video guy. I'm gonna come out to see you, and we're gonna do an episode of Party of Two. That'd be
shit! All right, and when I would be honored, my friend. That would be bigger than what Guy Fieri coming to town for me, because I mind melded with you. So
I appreciate that, man. We'll make it happen.
All right, Avi, thank you. There's Chef Avi, everybody. That is the Chubby Chickpea. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. And this is the official Food Truck Podcast, produced by Broadcast Hippo. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody.